You asked me where did my Hegel go. Now stay with me today and we'll talk about its replacement. Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. Now today we are going to talk about two products that are really not your ordinary commercial mass-produced products. What I'm talking about is a preamp and amp coming from Acoustic Invader, which is a small manufacturer located here in Serbia, that's my own country, and I'll tell you the reasons why I like it so much, and then when we come to comparisons, I'll tell you why did I sell my Hegel and kept these, along with some other comparisons too. So let's quickly start. As I mentioned, first I'll do a little bit of introduction because unlike bigger brands, you're probably never heard about Acoustic Invader. And as I said, it's a small company located here in Serbia, and the constructor is actually dedicated to creating these really high quality pieces of gear. So if you look at the average price of gear that I review usually here on my channel, these are quite expensive. Preamp and power amp cost 1400 euros each, meaning that together it's 2800 euros. And just before you shrug your shoulders and be like, oh man, that's too expensive, if you by any chance in a position to think about gear priced this much, stay with me because you are in for a surprise, believe me, compared to many factory products that are praised all around the globe. So I'll quickly get you through some main specs, starting with the power amp because it's easier for me. This is actually based on an ICE power module 1200 AS2, which is a really powerful Class D module, like releasing somewhere around 600 watts into 8 ohms and like 700 watts into 4 ohms. So you'll never miss power if that's what you're worried about. And the build quality itself is really nice. This is like really thick aluminum, and that especially goes for the front plate as well as the back plate. Those are really thick, but also everything else is quite sturdy made. And on the back here, you can see that we have some pretty high quality connectors, starting with speaker binding posts that are WBT next gen. And these are gelded, because I think they are silver plated and so on, but these are gold plated. Anyways, these are one of the highest quality binding posts that you can buy on the market nowadays. And the same care was took when it comes to power. So this power inlet is iiWi company, also gold plated. That's also not your cheap $1 connector. Now I know probably a lot of you will disagree that connector quality will make any difference sonic wise, but I tend to disagree. Oh yeah, and lastly on the bottom here you can see there are 3 aluminum feet. So as you can see, a really nice attention to details. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention that, but you've seen it already, there are only balanced inputs on the back. But I believe that the constructor will do single-ended inputs if asked, but he told me that all this preamp and amp combo actually sounds much better in balanced mode. And I actually confirmed that by using both single-ended and balanced outputs from several DACs and found out that balanced sounds superior. But that leads me to the preamp. And this is a JFET-based balanced preamplifier. And when I say balanced, I mean this is a fully balanced design. So each channel, left and right, has its own power supply, its own transformer, and everything is completely separated from each other. So if you actually use its single-ended inputs, and it does provide them, you definitely lose some fidelity, some layering, and some quality of the sound that you get with balanced inputs. That said, we have a choice of 5 single-ended inputs, RCA connectors, and 2 XLR inputs. And on the output side of things, you again have 1 single-ended output and 1 balanced output. As you can see on this unit, there are several colors on RCA connectors because these really shiny ones are rhodium plated. There is gilded one, gold-plated, and also silver-plated one. By default, manufacturer will ship everything rhodium-plated. But this one that I have here is actually second-hand unit. And the original owner asked producer to make several variations so he can actually play and discover do different plated connectors influence sound tonality. And surprisingly, I played with it too. Yes, it does. Not much, but by a little bit. And I won't talk about that here because it's not the topic. Also on the bottom you can see again aluminum feet. And in the front you see two knobs. One is input selector and power button simultaneously, while the other one is volume control. And now I'll quickly turn it on to show you just how it looks. Okay, hopefully it should be red LED in the front. That means it's in a standby mode. Then you press this once. It turns on. Now you can select different inputs, change the volume, and of course you can do all of that by using this remote control that has much more functions that you actually need, but I think it can also be used for Acoustic Invader DAC and maybe some other devices, I'm not sure about that. Anyways, it's made out of plastic, but it feels nice and sturdy enough, and it reacts greatly. As you can see, even from behind, it actually gets my commands. And for the power amp, there is an interesting thing. You actually switch it on once with the power switch here on the back. But then the unit is in a standby mode. But after that, you do nothing. It's automatically in a standby mode until it detects a signal coming from the preamp. When that happens, it turns on. And when you stop playing music after 15 minutes without a signal, it automatically goes into a standby mode again. I think that's pretty neat, I like it. So that would pretty much be it. I won't bother you much with details and tech specs because you can go at acousticinvader.com and find out this all by yourself. And that finally leads me to how it really sounds. And yeah, I'll just have to do this, and you'll have to trust me on my word that this is not an ad. So, first thing that I've noticed when I inserted these into my own system, meaning that I've used Denafrips Ares II DAC that is fed with Pi 2 AES streamer and then connected to my CAF LS50s. The sound simply sounded bigger, more powerful, and more detailed, more 3D, like spacious, and simply more of everything compared to my Hegel H90. And I was a little bit shocked because I fully expected some things to be better, some things to maybe be equal, and maybe some things not to be as good. It's usually like that when you switch from one brand to another. Admittedly, this one is pricier than Hegel H90, so yeah, maybe that's expected, but the difference was so big that I was a little bit stunned, to be perfectly honest. And after a day of listening these, I switched back a day later to my H90 and realized, yeah, I'm not imagining it. Definitely everything just pulled back, congested, including like spaciousness, palpability of tones, and overall power handling. Everything just toned down. So after a few songs, I switched back again to Acoustic Invader combo and realized, oh yeah, this is the stuff. So every tone immediately became more palpable and more like 3D in space here in my room. But the sound stage also is really big. Everything left feels more to the left, even like extending outside the boundaries of speakers, and everything right more to the right. While the depth of the sound stage again stretched, and while I had a pretty decent depth with Hegel already, something different happened with Acoustic Invader combination. Everything that was deep in the sound stage was still deep, but things that are recorded forward, like in line with speakers, suddenly became even closer to me. It felt like sound stage stretched more towards me, towards the listener. And because of that, things got layered better and separated better. Something that's far behind is still very far behind, but things that are first and forward in the mix, like a singer, they became like really present in the room. And that was my first impression. Then the next thing that I've noticed is how much easier Acoustic Invader handles dynamic swings. It feels like it's giving power really, really effortlessly. I would just increase the volume a little bit more, and it always gives more and more and more power without me actually feeling that the sound stage is becoming stressed in any way. I definitely didn't have that with my previous integrated amp. It does go quite loud, but after some point, it's that feeling that there is sufficient loudness and everything, but it's just bothering you a little bit and you're not sure why and you want to decrease the volume. Well, that line is definitely much higher with Acoustic Invader here. And even my girlfriend noticed that. She came back after her day of work and was like, "Why is the music so loud? You usually don't listen to it so loud." And I was, because this thing and this thing, they can pump so much energy and you don't even notice it because the background is dark. Tones are well controlled. Everything sounds full but smooth. And that line, when you actually get annoyed by loudness, is set much higher. Now I was rocking levels that resembled more to like live jams in a cafes or something without feeling stressed. But I'm sure that you want the details, such as tonality, bass line, mid-range, vocals, details, things like that. So let's start with the tonality. I was actually a little bit skeptical because the Power Amp is a Class D module. And to be perfectly honest here, I do have some prejudice towards Class Ds. Because in the past, when I was listening to things like Class D Primaire amps, and Denon amps, and NAD amps, Yamaha amps, etc., they would always provide great level of details and great bass control, but at the cost of natural and fluid sounding mid-range, which basically means that it was a little bit dry sounding and thin sounding. Well, nothing like that is happening here. If anything, this combo sounds fuller, more palpable, more chesty, more liquid-like than Hegel amps. And Hegel amps are quite smooth and liquid sounding to begin with, but these are actually more full-bodied and more natural sounding. Well, of course, if your source is up to it. And I am using Denafrips Ares, which is our R2R DAC, and with it, it sounds like that. If I connect some cheap Sabre Delta Sigma implementation to the preamp, this preamp and amp combo will just pass that through and you'll get like thin analytical flat sound, because these are really not coloring the sound that much. They're just really capable of letting what's in the source pass through to your speakers. And as I said, in my case with R2R DAC, a pretty liquid, natural and lush sound is coming through this. Now let's talk a little bit about the bass line. Now, bass is really full and rich sounding and just tuneful. So usually when I listen to lesser pieces of gear, amps, if I say bass is full and fatty, it's usually a little bit slow and sluggish too. But when I say it's quick and nimble, that means it's a little bit on the drier side. It's quick, it's resolving, but slightly drier. And here it is a great combination of really full, lush bass line that has great control, and it is nimble. When listening to this combination, I feel that a lot of bass notes, a lot of bass rhythms, there are more notes that are making curves and changing tones constantly, and not like something that's just fired and then let go. So listening to this handling bass line was like watching a professional sportsman doing something with such ease and grace that it looks easy to you. Let's take like skating on ice, for example, like a professional hockey player or these figure ice skaters, dancers, whatever. When you look at them, they look like they were born on ice. And they make all these curves and jumps and spins with such ease that you're like, okay, this must not be difficult, right? But when you actually put a less skillful person on the ice, you realize, okay, he's not that gracious, and you'll just notice these rough, unrefined movements that this amateur skater is not completely in control of. And that's how it felt to me when I compared how this combo handles bass to most other amps that I've had in the past and I've tested at this channel. This just takes the bass line, it outputs the great amount of fullness, so everything sounds juicy and nice and musical, but the control and the handling of that bass is really something. And because of that, everything really sounds musical and tuneful. Then in the mid-range, there is again a great blend of fullness and lots and lots of details that are so well blended with that full part of the tone that I never feel that I could say, wow, this is like sharp sounding amp or bright sounding amp or anything like that. Because when I listen to a chesty vocal, I feel it so well placed in the center and so palpable, like I can just reach my hand and touch it. But when tiny details are happening, for example, like in this song, I love it because singer is so close to the mic and you hear every move of the lips, her breathing and things like that. I hear all of that in even greater details than I've heard it with my Hegel, but it's never sharp and kind of artificial sounding. It just blends so well with this physicality part of the tone that it sounds really natural. And basically the same conclusion goes for highest frequencies. This preamp and amp combo will never emphasize highest spectrum. And you'll never listen to a recording and just thinking, wow, these highs are bright and really up there. You know that feeling that there are components that make highest spectrum sound like all the time something is rustling and you're doing this or something like that. Because it feels like something is always making these paper noises or like wrinkled aluminum foil noises. Well, these don't do that. When there is not much high frequencies in the recording, I feel that they almost sound a little bit warm, but then something like a strong cymbal hit happens, and there is all the highs and the energy that you can ever wish for. Now this leads me to a few comparisons with some really well-known and well-reviewed products. And I mentioned it already throughout of this whole review, my Hegel H90, which is all-in-one and cheaper device. That's not really a fair comparison, but I'll make it anyway because I had that at hand, so maybe it will mean something to somebody. But it will be short because there just is no comparison. Acoustic Invader sounds bigger, like more spacious in all dimensions. It sounds like somebody just engaged 3D. And the bubble, like the sound pressure increased and reached you the listener, and enveloped you. And you feel like tones are suddenly coming, as I said, more to the left, more to the right. Some are closer than you, but some are also really far away. Unlike with H90, where I feel that I'm watching nice three-dimensional deep sound stage, but it starts somewhere there, and I'm like a spectator, I'm watching it. With Acoustic Invader, I feel that the sound stage also envelops me, and that it begins where I am. And for example, playing this song, it's a live recording, you definitely hear that. And sometimes I really felt like I can hear echoes and audience and things like that coming from all sides because spatial cues are that good. And also this is a great song to test that really powerful, full but tuneful bass line. It's just incredible how well in control of that bass line this combination is. And aside from that sound staging, H90 is also no match when it comes to power handling. You can get LS50s with H90 to a decently loud levels, and for like 99% of my listening, that's enough. But if you want to create a little bit louder atmosphere, like you're in a club listening to live instruments in your room, a little bit louder, it just cannot match what Acoustic Invader can do in that regard. I can just push this a little bit up, a little bit up, a little bit up, until the moment when everything sounds like I really have a drummer inside of my room. Big drum set and really high pressure. If you ever listen to a drummer in real life, you know that's a really loud instrument, even without any amplification. And Acoustic Invader can make it feel realistic in your room, while Hegel cannot do that without feeling strained and without feeling like a amped recording. Now, the more interesting comparison would probably be with H190, and that's much pricier amp than H90. It is also like all-in-one solution because it does have digital inputs and a streamer, but it's also pricier than this Acoustic Invader combination. This is a respectable opponent, and it also has much more power than my own H90. So we did that comparison, and H190 did prove to be a worthier opponent. It had more bass impact, more slam, somewhat bigger, deeper sound stage than H90, but generally speaking, it was still tonally and spatially closer to H90 than it is to Acoustic Invader. And I felt that there was like H90, H190, then Acoustic Invader. Moving from Acoustic Invader to each of these Hegels felt like who turned off the 3D and who slightly congested the soundstage and the dynamics and the power handling. And that was actually the moment when I decided to purchase this combination, because I've realized I really like Hegel sound. They are neutral. They are a really good tool for a reviewer like me, but this is all that just better. And last comparison was made with NAD M32. That's a little bit out of date product because M33 recently was released to the market, but that's what I had at hand. So M32 is again another highly integrated solution. It's a Class D amplifier. It has both digital inputs, analog inputs, so it is an all-in-one solution. But that said, when it was new, like a few years ago, it used to cost around 4,000 euros in my country. And because of that, I find that a completely fair comparison, because these two are 2,800, and for these 1,200s, you can buy a really good DAC and a streamer. And both of my Denafrips Ares II and Pi 2 AES fit in that budget. So as with Hegel H190, I find this to be a pretty fair comparison. That said, NAD M32 exhibits really great resolution and detail retrieval. In my opinion, it's better in doing that than both Hegels, and it's on the pair with Acoustic Invader. So that goes for high frequency details, transients, edges. But its baseline is definitely on a leaner side. Now that's that Class D that I know. It does have really great control, but it sounds somewhat lean. And mid-range sounds kinda dry. My analogy that I always make is that if you take a glass and a metal spoon and you hit it through NAD M32, that will not sound as flowy and as glassy as I know it sounds in nature. But it does sound much more fluid and much more lifelike with Acoustic Invader here. Also, when it comes to the sound staging, NAD M32 develops pretty wide and tall sound stage. There is a lot of air to hear. But that feeling of dimensionality, of 3D-ness, like soundstage depth, is not as good as with Acoustic Invader. Tones feel more of a 2D imaging etched in a shallower space. Again, Acoustic Invader extends that bubble and it makes everything sound more 3D, more palpable, more physically present in the room. That comparison actually just cemented my opinion that here I have something really, really good. And I started thinking that probably to match this fluidity and fullness with this level of details and control and like exceptional sound staging, I would probably have to go much higher in price with these commercial brand offerings. I personally don't have access to such high-priced pieces of gear, but because I was so blown away by the quality of this combination, I actually started exploring the web and the forums to find other people's opinions on this brand. And I actually found a lot of interesting claims of like guys comparing them to Class A that cost much, much more. And in some cases, in some systems, for example, they preferred this power amp to Class A power amp. I'm talking about really high-endish type of systems with speakers such as Bowers & Wilkins 800 series and components like sources, preamps, amps costing over $10,000 and things like that. Then my train of thoughts was, well, if those guys that have been using these high-endish products say these can really compete with those, yeah, that clicks well with what I'm hearing, because this is like blowing away commercial brand competition that I've been using so far. Yes, guys, I know this sounds a lot like paid ad or something like that, but it's not. And I was thinking about this. I'm sitting in this review for around a month now. A lot of you noticed something different here in the back in my hi-fi rack, and we're asking like, where is the Hegel? What's that on the rack? Is it good? And here it is. It's a small manufacturer, Acoustic Invader, and he does not have stockpiled. You have to order it, then he will handmade it. It says here in the back, handmade by Acoustic Invader Serbia. So there is some waiting time involved and so on and so on. But this is such a good deal. It's such insane bang for the buck that I was thinking like, how he can do this? How he can so easily blow away really good products such as Hegel and NAD that are well reviewed and get like 5 stars in, I don't know, like mainstream media. And then I actually remembered some talks that are confirmed by some manufacturers that each hi-fi component that is a commercial product that we buy in a market, the bill of materials is actually 25%, roughly around 25% of the selling price of the unit. That means then when you actually buy a $1,000 amp, its bill of materials, the cost of production is around $250. The rest is R&D, marketing, then dealerships. There's nothing bad in that really. Those dealers, they let you listen to components, they let you compare them. They have shops, they have spaces, they have employees. But all of these people finally make something from 25% to 100% of the price that you pay in the end. Well, this is the model that like shit in the US is using. It's selling directly to customers. And because of that, I don't know the exact bill of materials of these products, but I'm thinking it's much higher, and you actually get much higher quality of everything than when you purchase a commercial product that spends a lot on ads and distributors and so on and so on. And I'm so happy that this review happened because I knew about these Acoustic Invader products. I wished to try them for some time now, but I was not in a hurry. I was thinking like, yeah, it might be a little bit better than what I have currently, but it's also more expensive. It's like that, you pay something significantly more and get a little bit more. But man, those small manufacturers selling directly to customers, they're changing the game. So it really is a whole new brave world out there. Manufacturers that are hungry for glory and fame and sales, and that are really offering more than those mainstream brands that you always see all around you, in all reviews, in all magazines, on billboards, and everywhere. This is something that is really, really worth auditioning. And with that, it's time to end this video. Now, I hope you liked it. If you did, then click that button. Also ring that bell so you can see all of my new videos. And huge thanks to all the patrons. Guys, you really help this channel. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye.